Welcome to the channel. If you believe that the greatest comeback is always personal, hit the like button now and subscribe. Let's dive into the story of betrayal and unbreakable foundations. The platinum thread. The man you loved, the one who built a life with you, abandons you for a newer, flashier model. He calls your life small. His new wife calls you poor. She laughs at your plain clothes and quiet job, wallpapering her luxurious new life all over social media for you to see. She doesn't know the designer handbag on her arm is a cheap replica, and she doesn't know the little coffee shop you run is a hobby. She has no idea that you, the poor ex-wife, are the one who signs the paychecks for the people she is desperately trying to impress, and that your family name, Blackwood, can end her entire world with one simple phone call. Valeria gripped the bouquet of white gardenias tight against her chest as the Tulum waves roared against the cliffs. The Pacific breeze carried the salty scent of the sea and something else, the cheap, sweet perfume that was not her own. Her hands trembled not from the excitement of being a newlywed, but from the nausea that had been churning her stomach since she found the platinum blonde hair on the pillow where Damien should have slept last night. 24 hours. That was how long the vows lasted that he had uttered in front of 200 guests at the Chapel of Serenity, overlooking the endless ocean. I promise to be faithful to you in prosperity and in adversity, in health and in sickness, all the days of my life. The words had sounded so perfect, so sincere, delivered in that deep voice that had melted her since they were 19. But now, as the Mexican sun burned her skin through the ivory silk dress she still wore, Valeria understood something that would change her life forever. Vows spoken before God can be lies whispered from the mouth of the serpent. The message on Damien's phone had been clear. Last night was amazing, Daddy. Whenever you want a repeat, you know where to find me. Your kitten from the Pearl Bar, her wedding night, the night that should have been sacred, special, the beginning of her life as a wife. And he had spent it in the arms of a stranger from the clubs on the Strip. Chapter 1. The vows lasted torture. The story of Valeria Sterling had been written in the ink of fulfilled dreams and expectations that glittered like the diamonds on her engagement ring. At 28, she was the youngest creative director at Horizon Group, an architecture and interior design firm based in Miami, which had expanded its operations to the Riviera Maya. She had studied architecture at the University of Miami, earned her master's in spatial design from the European Institute of Design in Milan, and returned to the States with a clear vision to transform luxury tourist spaces into experiences that told stories. Her professional success was undeniable. She had redesigned the lobby of the Encanto Pacifico Hotel in Puerto Vallarta, created the interiors of hotel magnate Robert Esposito's private residence in Tulum, and her latest project, the complete renovation of the Grand Mirador Resort in Tulum, had been featured on the cover of Architecture and Design magazine. Valeria was not just talented. She was relentless in her pursuit of perfection, meticulous down to the last detail, capable of visualizing an entire space with just a blink of her eye. But if her professional life was a solid building with steel foundations, her personal life had been built on the quicksand of a high school romance she had never questioned. Damien Augustus Kane had entered her life when they were 19 at a rooftop party in Miami Beach. He studied business administration at FIU. He came from a family of textile entrepreneurs in Georgia and had that easy smile and arrogant confidence that makes young women confuse ego with charisma. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with perfectly slicked-back dark hair and hazel eyes that knew exactly how to look at a woman to make her feel unique. For 9 years, Valeria had been his girlfriend, his confidant, his unconditional support, as he bounced from one failed business venture to another, always with grand promises and mediocre results. He had invested his family's money in a gym chain that went bankrupt in 2 years, then a wine import business that never took off, then a delivery app that arrived 3 years too late to the market. But Valeria was always there, believing in him, cheering him on, even lending him money from her own savings that was never repaid. Men need time to mature, her traditional mother Lucia would tell her. You are successful, my daughter, but a man needs to feel like the provider. Give Damien time to find his way. And Valeria waited. She waited as he searched for his way. She waited as she ascended in her career, and he remained in the same rented apartment. She waited as her friends married, had children, built lives, and she remained Damien's girlfriend at family gatherings, where her aunts looked at her with thinly veiled pity. The marriage proposal finally came a year ago, at a fancy restaurant, after 6 tequilas, and a tearful speech about how Valeria was his rock, his inspiration, the woman who always believed in him. The ring was modest. She knew because she understood carats and clarity, but she accepted it with tears in her eyes, because after 9 years, he was finally ready to commit. The wedding was planned for Tulum, the city where they had spent their first weekend together almost a decade ago. Valeria, with her eye for detail, organized every element with the precision of an architectural project. The Chapel of Serenity, built on a cliff top with floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Pacific Ocean like a living painting. 200 guests, white flowers imported from Oaxaca, a 7-course menu prepared by a renowned chef, live music with a trio playing boleros as the sun set over the bay. The wedding day, October 23rd, Valeria woke up in the presidential suite of the Grand Mirador Resort, the very hotel she had redesigned, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement that made her skin vibrate. You are radiant, my daughter, her mother whispered, as she adjusted the French tulle veil falling like a cascade from the crown of fresh gardenias. Damien is a lucky man. He was. Valeria looked at her full-length mirror and saw what everyone else would see. A beautiful, olive-skinned bride, dark hair in an elegant chignon, honey-colored almond eyes framed by long, natural lashes, peach lips smiling with the certainty of one who has waited patiently and finally received her reward. The ceremony was perfect. When Damien saw her walk down the aisle on her father's arm, his eyes welled up. You are the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, he whispered when she reached the altar. And when the priest asked if he promised to be faithful, Damien answered in a firm, clear voice. Yes, I promise. The reception was a display of Mexican elegance. Mariachis played Besame Mucho as they danced their first waltz as husband and wife. Guests toasted with French champagne and premium tequila. Valeria floated among the tables, receiving hugs and congratulations, feeling that finally, her personal life had achieved the success of her professional life. But there were signs she chose to ignore. The way Damien glanced at his phone during the reception, smiling at messages that quickly disappeared. How he vanished for 40 minutes, claiming he needed air after dinner. The way his friend, Raphael, his best man, avoided eye contact with her when Damien returned, glassy-eyed and hair mussed. At 11 p.m., as the party peaked and guests danced salsa and reggaeton on the Ocean View terrace, Damien approached Valeria with that smile she knew so well. Honey, I need to talk to the guys for a while. You know, the bachelor party extended. Raphael, Diego, and Mauricio want to have a few drinks at the hotel bar. It's tradition, baby. The last night of freedom and all that. Valeria felt a pang of disappointment. But Damien, it's our wedding night. The guests are starting to leave. I thought we'd go up to the suite together, open the champagne I specially ordered, and finally be alone as husband and wife." He gave her a quick kiss on the forehead, already pulling away. "It will be fast, my queen. An hour maximum. You go up, get comfortable, and I'll be there. I promise it will be worth the wait." And she, Valeria Sterling, successful architect, independent woman, respected professional, let him go. She watched him disappear toward the elevator with his friends, their coarse male laughter floating in the warm Tulum air. And she went up to the bridal suite alone. The suite was spectacular, of course. She herself had overseen every design detail. The pearl-colored walls, the king-size bed with a tulle canopy, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the illuminated bay, the private jacuzzi on the balcony. There were rose petals scattered on the Egyptian cotton sheets, champagne chilling on ice, and a soft jazz playlist playing from the hidden speakers. Valeria carefully took off her dress, hung it in the closet, and slipped into the champagne-colored silk nightgown she had bought in a boutique specifically for this night. She sat on the bed, drank one glass of champagne, then another. She checked her phone. 12:30 a.m. 1 a.m. 1:30 a.m. At 2 a.m. she called Damien's phone. It went straight to voicemail. At 3 a.m., she went down to the lobby in her robe and slippers, ignoring the glances of the night staff. The hotel bar was closed. The concierge kindly informed her that Mr. Kane had left the hotel at approximately 11:15 p.m. with 3 gentlemen. Valeria returned to the suite, her heart pounding with a mixture of rage and fear she still refused to acknowledge. She took off her nightgown, put on cotton pajamas, and lay down on the left side of the bed, her side, leaving the right side untouched. She fell asleep alone, crying silently on her wedding night. She woke up at 9 a.m. to the Mexican sun flooding the room. The right side of the bed was occupied. Damien was heavily snoring, still dressed in his groom's suit pants, his shirt stained with what looked like bright red lipstick, giving off a smell of alcohol, sweat, and a perfume that was definitely not hers. And on the pillow, next to his head, was a long, platinum blonde hair curled at the ends. Valeria got up silently, walked onto the balcony, and vomited into the bougainvillea planters, while the Pacific Ocean shone indifferently under the blue sky. The reader pause. At this moment, with the physical evidence on the pillow, what is the one thing Valeria should do before confronting Damien? Vote. A. Call a lawyer. B. Get proof. Photo video. C. Wake him up immediately. Chapter 2. The final verdict, Valeria. Valeria stayed on the balcony for 30 minutes, taking deep breaths, trying to organize the thoughts crashing against her mind, like the waves against the cliffs below. She could hear Damien's heavy breathing through the open doors, a sound that now brought her nausea instead of the familiar tenderness of shared years. When she finally returned to the room, he was still asleep. Valeria showered in silence, letting the hot water wash away the smudged makeup and dried tears, but not the humiliation that had settled in her chest like a tumor. She dressed in jeans and a white linen blouse, pulled her hair back into a ponytail, and sat on the sofa facing the bed, waiting. Damien woke up near noon, groaning and clutching his head. "God, what a hangover," he mumbled, before fully opening his eyes and seeing her sitting there like a judge, waiting for the defendant to present his case. "Good morning," Valeria said, her voice so cold it could have frozen the Pacific. He blinked, confused, then looked at his wrinkled clothes, the stained shirt, and something close to panic crossed his face. "Baby, I'm sorry. I had too much to drink. The guys took me to that bar on the Strip. You know how bachelor parties are, and I lost track of time." "What bar?" Valeria's voice didn't rise in volume. That was the terrifying part. She was completely calm. "I don't know. One around there? The Pearl, I think. There was music, dancing, men's stuff. Damien tried to smile. That mischievous, boyish grin that had always worked when he needed her to forgive him for being late, for forgetting an important date, for promising and failing to deliver. The pearl. Valeria pulled his phone from her own jacket pocket. She had taken it from the nightstand while he slept. Interesting name for a bar. Tell me, Damien, are the pearls there natural or cultivated? The confusion on his face was almost comical. What? I don't know what you're talking about. Valeria unlocked the phone. The password was still the date of their first kiss. How ironic. She read him the message she had found 3 hours earlier. Last night was amazing, Daddy. Whenever you want to repeat, you know where to find me. Your kitten from the Pearl Bar. Kisses where you liked them most. The color drained from Damien's face like water emptying from a tub. Valeria, it's not what you think. No. She stood up, walked to him, and held out the screen. Because I think that my husband, on our wedding night, while I was waiting in this room with champagne and fine lingerie, went to a strip club and slept with a woman who is now sending him sweet messages, reminding him how much fun they had. I didn't sleep with anyone. Damien stood up, swaying slightly. Yes, we went to the bar. Yes, there were women, but I just danced. I drank. I had some fun. It's normal, Valeria. Men do those things before they get married. We got married yesterday at 6 p.m., Damien. 18 hours ago, you were officially my husband, and this message was sent at 5 a.m. Valeria felt her voice starting to crack, and she hated herself for it. Explain the blonde hair on your pillow, then. Explain the lipstick stains on your shirt. Explain the smell of cheap perfume you still carry. You are exaggerating. You're being paranoid. Nothing happened. I swear on my mother. Damien tried to step toward her, but Valeria recoiled, as if his touch burned. Don't you dare swear on your mother after you swore before God yesterday that you would be faithful. The words came out like knives. Do you know how many hours your wedding vows lasted? Less than 24. Congratulations, Damien. You just set a personal record for disappointment, and you were competing against yourself with many previous records. Stop it now! He raised his voice, and Valeria saw for the first time the rage she had always suspected he hid behind the charming smiles. Are you hysterical? Yes, I went to the bar. Yes, I drank too much, but nothing happened that should matter to you. Men need those outlets. You can't expect me to become a monk just because we wear rings now. I don't expect you to be a monk. I expect you to be a man of your word. I expect you to respect the vows you made in front of 200 people. I expect that on our first night as husband and wife, you would have been here with me, instead of in the arms of a stripper. Damien let out a bitter laugh. And what did you want? A perfect romantic movie night. Grow up, Valeria. We've been together for 9 years. The sex isn't new anymore. Going to a bar, relaxing with friends, having a little fun without someone controlling my every move. That was new. The words fell on her like acid. Do I bore you? I didn't say that. You just said exactly that. Valeria felt something snap inside her. Something that had been cracked for years, but finally fragmented into 1,000 pieces. 9 years, Damien. 9 years I supported you while you jumped from failure to failure. I lent you money you never repaid. I waited while you found your way. I was understanding when you canceled dates because you had important meetings that never materialized into anything. I introduced you to my professional contacts who gave you opportunities you wasted. And when you finally decided to marry me, I thought it was because you loved me. But you don't love me, do you? You married me because I'm successful, because I have stability, because I am your safety net. That's not true. But his voice lacked conviction. Then tell me one thing. Valeria crossed her arms, shielding herself. If you needed that fun so badly, why did you marry me? You could have remained my boyfriend indefinitely. Why take the step of marriage if you already felt trapped before we even started? Damien didn't answer. He just stood there, hair messy and shirt stained, looking exactly like what he was. A mediocre man who had just been exposed in his mediocrity. Valeria's phone vibrated. It was a message from her mother. "How are the newlyweds? Your father and I are already back in the city. It was a beautiful wedding, my daughter. Damien will take good care of you." Valeria felt a hysterical laugh bubble in her throat, but she swallowed it. "Your things," she said finally. "Pack your things. This suite is mine. I booked it. I paid for it with my own money. Get out. Don't be ridiculous. We're married. You can't kick me out. Watch me." Valeria walked to the door and opened it. "Leave now before I call security and explain that my husband of less than 24 hours cheated on me on our wedding night. It won't be good publicity for the hotel I designed, but I'm sure they'll love the drama." Damien looked at her with something that looked like hatred mixed with disbelief. "You were always controlling. That's why my businesses never worked out. You burdened me with your questions, your unsolicited advice, your impossible standards. No man wants a woman who earns more than him and constantly rubs it in his face. I never rubbed anything in your face. You felt small because you are small. And you know what, Damien? You're right about one thing. No man worth anything feels threatened by his wife's success. Only the mediocre ones do." Valeria felt tears burn in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Go. Please, just go." He grabbed his suitcase from the closet. He hadn't even unpacked, and walked out of the room. Without looking back, the door closed with a soft click that sounded like the end of the world. Valeria waited until she was absolutely sure he was gone. Then she walked into the bathroom, turned the shower on until the water ran scalding hot, and stepped in below first. She sat on the shower floor, hugging her knees, and finally let out the cry she had been holding back. She cried for the 9 lost years. She cried for the innocence of believing that love was enough. She cried for the humiliation of being cheated on the night that should have been magical. She cried for the version of herself that had sacrificed so much for a man who never valued her. She cried until the water ran cold, and her tears were exhausted. When she stepped out of the shower, soaked and trembling, she looked at herself in the steamed mirror. Her face was swollen, her eyes red, her hair plastered to her skull. She looked like a destroyed woman, but somewhere deep inside, in a place she had forgotten existed, she felt something else. Rage. Not the hot, explosive rage that had made her kick him out. A cold, calculating rage, the kind of rage that builds empires while others weep over ruins. Valeria Sterling had spent 9 years being understanding, patient, loving, sacrificing. She had been the perfect girlfriend, the ideal fiancée, and, finally, the betrayed wife. But as she dried herself and put on clean clothes, she made a decision that would change the course of her life forever. No more. She would never again be the woman who waited. She would never again be the one who forgave. She would never again put the needs of a mediocre man above her own dignity. And she would definitely, absolutely, never, ever go back to Damien Augustus Kane. What she didn't know yet was that the humiliation was just beginning, because Damien wasn't going to accept her decision quietly. Small men, when rejected, become dangerous. And Tulum, with all its sun and glittering beaches, was about to become the backdrop for a battle Valeria would have to fight not only against him, but against herself. Chapter 3. The War of Reputations. Valeria did not leave Tulum immediately. Part of her, the proud, stubborn part she had inherited from her paternal grandmother, refused to flee like a victim. She had paid for 3 days in the presidential suite of the Grand Mirador Resort, and by God, she was going to use them. The next 2 days were a surreal exercise in forced normalcy. She went down to the hotel restaurant for breakfast, ignoring the discreet glances of the staff, who clearly knew something had happened with the newlyweds. She walked the beach with dark sunglasses concealing her swollen eyes. She sat on her sweet balcony with her laptop, reviewing work emails, and pretending her life hadn't collapsed. But the nights were impossible. The nights brought intrusive thoughts, questions that had no answer. How long had he been cheating? Had it been only that night? Or had there been other women during the 9 years? What was it about her that wasn't enough? Was she too successful? Too independent? Too demanding, as he had implied? On the 3rd day, as she packed her bags to return to Miami, she received a call from her mother. "My daughter, is everything all right? Damien arrived 2 days ago and is staying at his mother's house. He says you had a fight and you needed space, but he didn't give me details. What happened?" Valeria closed her eyes, breathing deeply. "Mom, he cheated on me on our wedding night." The silence on the other end of the line was long and tense. Finally, her mother spoke in a carefully modulated voice. "Are you sure? Men sometimes go out with their friends after weddings. It's a tradition. You aren't misinterpreting things, are you?" The words were like a slap. "Mom, I found messages from the woman he slept with. I found physical evidence. There is nothing to misinterpret." "Oh, Valeria," her mother sighed. "Look, what he did is wrong. I'm not telling you otherwise, but you just got married. Marriages have ups and downs. All men make mistakes, especially when they're scared of commitment. Your father had his situations in the early years. And look, we've been married for 40 years. Valeria felt something break inside her, but it wasn't pain. It was clarity. "Mom, are you telling me I should forgive him? That I should accept that my husband betrayed me on our first night as husband and wife? I'm telling you to be practical. You're 28. If you divorce now, what will people say? That you couldn't keep your husband for 24 hours? Besides, divorce is a scandal. Think about your professional reputation. Think about the family. And what about thinking about me?" Valeria's voice rose. "What about my dignity? What about my feelings? Marriage requires sacrifices, mija. All women have to make sacrifices. You are strong. You are successful. You have many things. You can't have everything perfect. Sometimes we have to turn a blind eye to men's flaws if we want to have a family." Valeria hung up the phone without saying goodbye. She finished packing on autopilot, paid the hotel bill, and drove back to Miami in complete silence. No music, no podcasts, just the sound of her breathing and the car engine. When she arrived at her apartment in the trendy Brickell area, a 2-bedroom space she had bought with her own money 3 years ago, she found 15 missed calls from Damien and a voicemail that said, "Valeria, please, we need to talk. I made a mistake, I know, but don't destroy our marriage over a moment of weakness. I love you. I've always loved you. We can get through this together." She deleted the message without finishing it. The next few days were a blur of work meetings she attended like a zombie, meals she didn't taste, and nights where she stayed awake until 3 a.m., navigating websites of lawyers specializing in quick divorces. It was her best friend, Renata Vega, who finally snapped her out of the trance. Renata Fuentes was a partner in a business consulting firm, divorced 2 years prior from a man who had cheated on her with his assistant. She was tough, direct, and exactly what Valeria needed right then. "What are you waiting for?" Renata asked her while sharing a bottle of red wine at Valeria's apartment. "You know what you have to do. Hire a lawyer, start the proceedings, and get out of this as quickly as possible." "But," Valeria let out a shaky sigh. 9 years, Renata. I invested 9 years of my life in this relationship. How do I just throw them away? Those years are already lost, Valeria. The question is, are you going to lose the next 42? Renata looked at her with a mix of compassion and firmness. Listen to me well. Men like Damien don't change. He cheated on you on your wedding night. It wasn't a mistake after 5 years of solid marriage. It wasn't a midlife crisis. It was on your wedding night. That man is telling you exactly who he is. Are you going to believe him? Or are you going to waste your life trying to turn him into who you want him to be? The words resonated in Valeria with the force of a truth she had been avoiding. Everyone says I should forgive him. My mother, my aunts, even some friends say all men are like that it's part of the package. Then everyone is perpetuating a lie that keeps women trapped in mediocre relationships. Renata refilled their glasses. Do you know what I learned from my divorce? That being alone is infinitely better than being with someone who makes you feel alone. That real loneliness, the one you consciously choose, is power. But loneliness within a relationship is poison. That night, Valeria called Ricardo Mendoza, the most aggressive family law attorney in Miami. He had a reputation for not accepting mediocre settlements and for fiercely protecting his clients. I want a divorce, she told him in their first meeting. Quick, clean, and without compromise. Ricardo was a man in his 50s, perfectly cut gray hair, an Italian suit, and a gaze that had seen every possible type of marital betrayal. Are there shared assets? No. I bought my apartment before we got married. He has no property, no children. Ricardo's eyebrows rose slightly. 11 days. That must be a record even for me. Grounds. Proven adultery. I have messages from the other woman on his phone. I have witnesses who saw him leave the hotel with his friends. I can get statements from the bar staff if necessary. It won't be necessary. The messages are enough. I can have the papers ready in 3 days. The process will be quick, given there are no assets to divide or children involved. Ricardo leaned back in his chair. Are you prepared for war, Valeria? Because when a man like the one you describe faces divorce, especially one initiated by a successful woman, he gets nasty. I'm already at war, she replied in a voice she didn't recognize as her own. It was colder, harder, more determined. The difference is, now I know I'm fighting. Chapter 4. The Threat and the Triumph. And so the process began. Ricardo sent the divorce papers to Damien, who responded with disbelief, then with telephonic pleas, then with increasingly desperate messages. You can't do this to me. We are a family. Please, just give me a chance to explain. You're destroying what we built together. Valeria didn't respond to any of them. Instead, she immersed herself in work with an intensity that worried her colleagues. She accepted a new project no one else wanted: the complete renovation of the Castellano Boutique Hotel in San Miguel de Allende, a job that would require 3 months of constant travel and sleepless nights. Perfect. But the real humiliation came 3 weeks after the divorce process began, when Valeria received a call from her boss, Mauricio Rios, CEO of Horizon Group. Valeria, I need to see you in my office. It's urgent. When she entered Mauricio's office, she also found Patricia Lujan, the HR director, with a serious expression that boded ill. Sit down, please, Mauricio said. It has come to our attention that a delicate situation involving your husband has surfaced. Valeria's stomach sank. What kind of situation? Patricia took the floor. Damien Kane has been contacting several of our current and potential clients. He tells them you are going through a mental health crisis, that you are acting irrationally due to stress, and that any contract or agreement signed with you in recent months should be reviewed because you are not in your right mind. The world stopped. What else? More specifically, Patricia continued, he contacted Robert Esposito of Esposito Luxury Resorts, who was your client on the Tulum project. He told him that your recent episode in Tulum was a sign of psychological instability, and that the company should consider replacing you on the San Miguel project. Valeria felt the blood boil. That is defamation. It's a lie. I am perfectly fine. I am simply divorcing a man who cheated on me." "We know," Mauricio said softly, "and we want you to know you have our complete support. We have already contacted the clients in question and assured them you are an impeccable professional. But you need to handle this legally, Valeria. This man is attacking you where it hurts most, your career." Valeria left that meeting trembling not from fear, but from a rage so pure and crystalline it could cut glass. She called Ricardo immediately. "Damien is trying to destroy my professional reputation. He's contacting my clients, defaming me. I want to sue him. I want him to pay for every word he has said." "Calm down," Ricardo replied. "This is good for us. He is showing his true colors. We will document everything. We will add defamation charges to the divorce, and we will make sure it is legally recorded what kind of man he is. But Valeria, you need to prepare yourself. This is going to get worse before it gets better." Ricardo was right. The following days brought an avalanche of attacks. Damien created fake social media profiles to leave negative reviews about her work. He contacted architecture magazines with tips about supposed problems in projects she had completed. He even showed up at her apartment building, demanding to speak to her, shouting in the lobby that he was her husband and had a right to see her. Valeria obtained a restraining order, and then something happened that changed everything. One afternoon, while working from her home office, she received an email from Catalina Mendez, the editor-in-chief of Contemporary Design magazine. Catalina was a woman Valeria deeply admired, a tough, respected journalist in the industry. The email read, "Valeria, I have heard rumors about your personal situation. I would like us to talk, not for a gossip story, but because I believe your experience could help other women in the industry. Call me when you are ready." Valeria called her that same night, and for the first time since everything began, she spoke openly about what had happened: the betrayal, the pressure to forgive, Damien's attempts to destroy her career. "What you are telling me," Catalina said after listening, "is not just your story. It is the story of thousands of professional women who are sabotaged by men who cannot stand for them to shine brighter. Would you be willing to let us publish your story? Without names, if you prefer, but with the real details?" Valeria didn't hesitate. "Use my name. Use his name. Use everything. If my humiliation can serve to make even one woman realize she doesn't have to stay with a man who betrays her and then tries to destroy her, then it's worth it." The article was published 2 weeks later with the title, "When Female Success Becomes a Threat," the story of an architect betrayed on her wedding night and attacked for daring to divorce. The response was massive. The article went viral. Valeria received hundreds of messages from women sharing their own stories of betrayal and sabotage. International magazines requested interviews, and most importantly, the industry closed ranks around her in support. Robert Esposito called her personally. "Valeria, I want to apologize for even considering that man's words. Not only do you keep the San Miguel contract, but I have 3 more projects I'd like you to lead." The calls started coming in. Old clients, new clients, business owners who wanted to work with the architect who refused to be silenced. And Damien, seeing himself publicly exposed for the kind of man he was, finally signed the divorce papers without further resistance. Epilogue: the redesigned life. But Valeria's true transformation didn't come from the job opportunities or public support. It came one night, 3 months after the wedding, when she looked in her bathroom mirror and saw a different woman. She was no longer the hopeful bride in an ivory dress. She was no longer the understanding employee who sacrificed her time for a man's ego. She was no longer the obedient daughter who listened to advice about turning a blind eye to infidelity. She was Valeria Sterling, architect, entrepreneur, survivor, warrior. And she was ready not only to rebuild her life, but to build an empire. 6 months after the divorce, Valeria was sitting on the terrace of a historic cafe in Mexico City, waiting for Catalina Mendez. The editor had insisted on a personal meeting, refusing to give details over the phone, only saying, "I have a proposal that is going to change your life." Valeria had visibly changed. Her hair, once always perfectly straight and pulled back, now fell in natural waves over her shoulders. She had slimmed down, not in a sickly way, but the kind of leanness that comes from converting anxiety into productive energy at the gym. She wore a terracotta suit from an emerging Mexican designer, accented with silver earrings from Taxco artisans. She no longer needed to dress to impress anyone. She dressed for herself. The last few months had been a whirlwind. The Castellano Boutique Hotel project in San Miguel de Allende was not only completed 3 weeks ahead of schedule, but had won the National Interior Design Award. The photos of the hotel, with its colonial courtyards reimagined with contemporary touches, its rooms combining Oaxacan textiles with minimalist furniture, and its spa built around a centuries-old jacaranda tree, had appeared in Architectural Digest Mexico and had been shared by design influencers worldwide. But beyond professional success, Valeria had experienced something deeper. She had discovered who she was without Damien's shadow. She had taken pottery classes on Saturday mornings, discovering a passion for working with her hands that she had never explored. She had traveled alone to Oaxaca, Chiapas, and Yucatan, documenting vernacular architecture and traditional building techniques she wanted to incorporate into her future designs. She had started a blog on sustainable design that had attracted thousands of followers, and perhaps most importantly, she had cut ties with every person in her life who had advised her to forgive and forget. Her mother called occasionally, but Valeria kept the conversations brief and superficial. Some friendships had naturally fallen away, and she didn't miss them. Instead, she had built a network of strong women, entrepreneurs, artists, professionals, who understood that female success required no man's permission or validation. Renata had become her closest confidant. They dined together every Friday, sharing wine and conversations about projects, future travel, and life after marriage. "Have you dated anyone?" Renata had asked the previous week. "No," Valeria answered honestly, "and not because there aren't opportunities, simply because I'm still learning to be with myself. For 9 years I defined value by how Damien saw me. Now I need to define it by how I see myself." "That's very mature," Renata had said. "But also give yourself permission to have fun. Not all men are Damien. There are good men out there." "Maybe," Valeria had replied with a smile. "But for now, I'm fine alone." And it was true. For the first time in her adult life, Valeria was genuinely comfortable with solitude. It wasn't a terrifying emptiness she desperately needed to fill. It was a quiet space where she could hear her own thoughts, pursue her own dreams, make decisions based only on what she wanted. Catalina arrived with her characteristic energy, kissing Valeria on both cheeks before sitting down. She was a woman in her mid-40s, short hair dyed an audacious platinum blonde, dressed completely in black, with a red silk scarf knotted around her neck. "You look incredible," Catalina said, as the waiter brought them café de olla. "Divorce suited you well." Valeria laughed. "That's one way to look at it. It's the only way to look at it. That man was draining you, Valeria. Now you shine." Catalina pulled her iPad from a leather bag. "But I didn't call you to flatter you. I called you because I have a serious proposal." "I'm listening." "Your article generated a massive response, not just here in Mexico, but internationally. We received letters from women in Spain, Argentina, the US, Colombia, all telling similar stories, and something occurred to me. What if we turn this into something bigger?" Valeria frowned. Bigger how? Catalina leaned forward, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. A monthly column in the magazine about women in architecture and design who have overcome personal and professional obstacles, but not just stories of victims, but of triumphs. Women who took their darkest moments and turned them into stepping stones to success. You would be the columnist and guest editor of this section. I'm not a writer, Valeria protested. You are a storyteller. I've seen your blog. You have an authentic voice, passionate, honest, and you have credibility. Women trust you because you were publicly vulnerable. That is rare and valuable. Catalina slid the iPad toward her. Look, I already have 4 potential stories. A Chilean architect whose partner tried to steal credit for an award-winning design. A Spanish industrial designer who was sexually harassed by a major client and reported him, losing contracts but gaining respect. A Brazilian urban planner who overcame extreme poverty to become the director of planning for Sao Paulo. Valeria scanned the stories, feeling something ignite in her chest. This is powerful. It is, and you are the perfect person to give them a voice. Catalina paused. There's more. The magazine wants to expand its digital coverage. We are considering an associated podcast where you interview these women in depth, and there is interest from a publisher to eventually turn this into a book. Valeria's head was spinning. Catalina, I manage architectural projects. I don't know anything about journalism, podcasts, books, but you know about resilience, you know about transformation, and you know how to connect with people authentically. The rest is learned. Catalina took a sip of her coffee. Think about it. I don't need an answer now, but imagine the impact you could have, not just designing physical spaces, but helping women redesign their lives. Valeria fell silent for a long moment. A year ago, she would have immediately rejected this proposal. Too risky, too exposed. What would her colleagues say? What would Damien think? But Damien was no longer part of her equation, and her colleagues had proven they respected her authenticity, not her silence. I accept, she said finally, with one condition. Tell me. I want the first column to be about women rebuilding their self-esteem after toxic relationships, and I want to include practical resources, therapists, support groups, specialized lawyers, not just inspiration, but concrete tools. Catalina smiled broadly. I knew you would say yes, and I love your approach. When can you start? Give me 2 weeks to finish a pending project, and I'm all yours. They left the cafe 2 hours later, with a signed contract and a deadline for the first column. Valeria walked through the streets of the historic center, passing the Metropolitan Cathedral with its imposing Baroque architecture, the Palace of Fine Arts with its Art Deco domes, feeling the world expand in ways she never imagined. Her phone vibrated. It was a message from Renata. How did the meeting with Catalina go? Valeria replied. I just committed myself to a project that terrifies and excites me in equal measure. I'll tell you tonight over wine. But before putting the phone away, she saw another notification. A LinkedIn message from someone named Sebastian Rossi, founding partner of Rossi and Associates, one of the most prestigious architecture firms in Latin America, with offices in Mexico, Buenos Aires, and Madrid. The message read, Dear Valeria, I have followed your work with great admiration. We are expanding our luxury hotel design division, and I would like to discuss the possibility of you joining our team, not as an employee, but as a partner. I believe your vision and personal story make you exactly the kind of leader we want in our firm. I would be available for a conversation next week. Valeria read the message 3 times. Partner, not employee, but partner in one of the most respected firms in the industry. A year ago, she would have called Damien first to tell him, to ask for his opinion, to make sure he was comfortable with her success. Now, she simply replied, Sebastian, I would love to talk. Are you available next week? That night, Valeria sat on her balcony with a glass of white wine, watching the city lights blink like terrestrial stars. She thought about the journey since that horrible morning in Tulum, when she found the blonde hair on the pillow. She thought about the tears, the humiliation, the rage, the fear, and she thought about the woman who had risen from those ashes. It hadn't been easy. There were nights when she doubted herself, when her mother's voice echoed in her head, saying she had been too harsh, too proud, that she should have forgiven. There were moments when the empty apartment felt too silent, and the bed too big, and the solitude too heavy. But there were also mornings when she woke up and realized an entire day had passed without her thinking about him. There were afternoons when she genuinely laughed for the first time in months. There were moments when she looked at her life that she built all by herself, with her own hands, on her own terms, and thought it was worth every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt. It was worth it, because on the other side of that pain is the most authentic person you will ever be. The freedom she discovered was not the absence of company. It was the presence of choice. Her phone vibrated again. This time it was her father, which was unusual because he rarely called directly. "Dad, my daughter, your mother asked me not to call you, but I need to tell you something." His voice sounded strained. "I've been quiet this last year because I didn't know what to say, but I saw your article in the magazine and read the comments, and I realized something I'm ashamed to admit." Valeria felt her heart race. "What is it, Dad?" "That I failed your mother for years, and by not saying anything when she advised you to forgive Damien, I was failing you too." His voice cracked slightly. "What that man did to you was unforgivable, and you made the right decision, the brave decision, the decision your mother never dared to make, and that I never supported her in making." Tears streamed down Valeria's cheeks. "I'm proud of you, Mija, not just for your professional success, but for your personal courage. You taught me that it's never too late to demand respect, to demand dignity, and I want you to know that I will always support you, no matter what you choose." They talked for an hour, an honest and vulnerable conversation they had never had before. When she hung up, Valeria felt another piece of her healing had been completed. The meeting with Sebastian Rossi a week later was revelatory. His office was a design studio in itself. Sebastian was a 42-year-old architect, a Harvard graduate, with a reputation for being brilliant, but demanding. He was tall, sharp-featured, with dark hair and premature gray at the temples, and a presence that commanded respect without arrogance. "Thank you for coming," he said after the formal greetings. "I'll be direct. I want you to join my firm as a partner in the luxury hotel design division. We have followed your work since the Tulum project, but it was your handling of the Castellano Hotel that convinced us you are exactly what we need." "It's a generous offer," Valeria replied carefully, "but I need to understand what being a partner means in your firm. I am not interested in a title without real decision-making power." Sebastian smiled. "I like that you get straight to the point. Partner means 25% equity in the hotel division, voice and vote on all major projects, and complete creative autonomy in your designs. It also means you share both the profits and the losses. And my current projects, I have commitments with Horizon Group. We expect you to finish them honorably. We don't want you to burn bridges. In fact, we prefer you maintain good relationships with your current employer. This doesn't start until you are ready, and when it is, it will be with clear contracts and fair terms." Valeria considered the proposal. It was risky to leave the security of Horizon Group, but it was also the opportunity to build something of her own, to have true decision-making power, to take her vision to an international scale. "I need to think about it," she said finally. "Give me 2 weeks. Take all the time you need. But Valeria, I want you to know something." Sebastian leaned back in his chair. I read your story. I know what you went through. And part of the reason I want you in my firm is precisely because you survived that and came out stronger. We need leaders who understand resilience, who know how to get up from the blow. That is not taught in any university. Valeria left that meeting with her head full of possibilities. She spent the next 2 weeks in a thorough analysis: financial, professional, personal. She consulted with a corporate contract lawyer, spoke with Renata, who pushed her to take the risk, and finally spoke with herself, with that inner voice she had learned to listen to in recent months. She accepted the partnership. Her last week at Horizon Group was bittersweet. Mauricio sincerely congratulated her, gave her a glowing letter of recommendation, and told her, "We always knew you were too big to stay here forever. Go and conquer the world." Valeria's first column in Contemporary Design magazine was published with the title, "Rebuilding the Foundations: How to Recover Your Self-Esteem." After a toxic relationship, it was raw, honest, practical. It included her own story, but also concrete resources, helpline numbers, directories of therapists specializing in relational trauma, information about support groups. The response was overwhelming. In 24 hours, the article had received 50,000 views. The comments filled pages, women sharing their own stories, thanking Valeria for giving them words for experiences they didn't know how to name, sharing additional resources, forming a spontaneous community of mutual support. And in the midst of all this, the new job, the column, the media interviews, Valeria realized something profound. She had turned her greatest pain into her greatest purpose. Damien still existed somewhere in Miami, but he was irrelevant to her life. Occasionally she heard through others that he was still struggling with temporary jobs, that he had tried to start another failed business, that he told anyone who would listen that his ex-wife was a bitter feminist who had destroyed him. Valeria felt no pity for him, no rage, nothing at all. She had simply moved on, building a life so beautiful and successful that he could never reach it even in his best dreams. And that, she decided, was the best possible revenge, her total and absolute indifference. 18 months after that morning in Tulum, Valeria Sterling stood on the stage of the Esperanza Heiress Theater in Mexico City, facing Fiji women who had paid to hear her speak at the first Redesign Your Life conference, an event she had organized along with Catalina Mendez and Renata Vega. She wore a self-designed terracotta dress. Her hair fell in natural waves over her shoulders, and on her ring finger, there was no wedding ring. Instead, she wore a silver ring with onyx stones she had bought herself as a gift the day she signed the partnership contract with Rossi and Associates. The auditorium was full of women of all ages, 20-somethings seeking direction, 30-somethings rebuilding after divorces, 40s reinventing themselves professionally, 50s finding their voice for the first time. All had come because they had read Valeria's columns, heard her podcast, seen her television interviews. 18 months ago, Valeria began, her amplified voice filling the theater. I stood in front of a mirror in a Tulum hotel wearing a bridal nightgown no one saw, holding a glass of champagne, waiting for a man who was in the arms of another woman. And I asked myself, how did I get here? The silence in the auditorium was absolute. The answer, I discovered, was simple and painful. I got there because for 9 years I built my identity around a man who never valued me. Because I confused patience with complacency. Because I believed that love required sacrifice, when healthy love actually requires mutual respect. Because I was so afraid of being alone that I accepted being accompanied by someone who made me feel invisible. Some women in the audience nodded. Others, discreetly wiped away tears. But today, I'm not here to talk to you about what I lost. I'm here to talk to you about what I gained. Valeria smiled. When I let go of that marriage, when I let go of the idea of who I was supposed to be, I discovered who I really was. A talented architect, yes, but also a writer, a speaker, a mentor, a woman who turned her pain into a platform to help others. She walked across the stage, her presence commanding but accessible. In these 18 months, I became a partner in an international architecture firm. I designed 3 luxury hotels that have won awards. I wrote 20 columns that reached millions of readers. I started a podcast that is downloaded in 40 countries. And most importantly, I learned that being alone doesn't mean being incomplete. It means being free to discover all the versions of yourself that a mediocre marriage would never let you explore. The applause began to erupt, but Valeria raised a hand. I want to be clear about something, because I know many of you are here looking for a magic formula. There isn't one. There is no 5-step process to heal from a betrayal. There is no precise moment where you wake up and the pain is gone. The road is ugly. It is painful. It is confusing. There will be days when you want to call your ex just to hear his voice. There will be nights when you question every decision you made. There will be moments when loneliness feels like an abyss that is going to swallow you. She paused, letting the words resonate. But there will also be mornings when you wake up and realize an entire day passed without you thinking about him. There will be afternoons when you genuinely laugh for the first time in months. There will be moments when you look at your life that you built all by yourself, with your own hands, on your own terms, and you think, it was worth every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt. It was worth it because on the other side of that pain is the most authentic person you will ever be. The theater erupted in applause that lasted several minutes. Valeria saw faces that reflected hope, determination, recognition. She saw women who saw themselves in her story, who found strength in her survival. After the conference, during the Q&A session, a woman in her mid-30s raised her hand. Her voice trembled as she spoke. Valeria, my husband cheated on me 6 months ago. We have 2 small children. Everyone, my family, his parents, our friends, tells me I must forgive him for the children's sake. But every time I see him, I feel nauseated. How did you know that leaving your marriage was the right decision? Valeria took a deep breath. First, I want to say that every situation is unique. I didn't have children, which gave me more freedom to make quick decisions. Your situation is more complex, but I will tell you this. Children don't need an intact marriage. They need emotionally healthy parents. If staying in that marriage is destroying you inside, your children will feel it. You are teaching them that love looks like resignation and silent suffering. Is that what you want them to learn about relationships? The woman shook her head, tears running down her cheeks. Consult with a therapist. Talk to a lawyer to understand your options. Build a support network. And then make the decision that allows you to look at yourself in the mirror with dignity. Because at the end of the day, your children will grow up and make their own lives. But you will have to live with the woman you became because of the decisions you make today. More questions followed. A 24-year-old asked how to know if a relationship is worth saving or if it's time to go. A 52-year-old woman asked if it was too late to reinvent herself professionally after a divorce. An entrepreneur asked how to handle professional sabotage from an ex-partner. Valeria answered each one with honesty, with compassion, without sugarcoating the reality, but offering genuine hope. When the event ended, dozens of women lined up to speak with her personally. Valeria stayed until she spoke with the last one, listening to stories, offering hugs, sharing contacts for useful resources. It was past midnight when she finally left the theater. Renata was waiting outside with her car. "You're incredible," Renata said, as they drove back to Valeria's apartment. "Seriously, you transformed your worst moment into a movement." "It wasn't just me," Valeria replied. "It was every woman who had the courage to share her story. It was Catalina for believing in me. It was you for pushing me when I wanted to give up. It was a collective effort." "Always so humble." Renata smiled. "But take the credit, Valeria. What you achieved in 18 months is extraordinary." Valeria looked out the window at the illuminated streets of Mexico City. "Do you know what the most ironic thing is? Damien did me a favor by betraying me. If he had been a mediocre but not unfaithful husband, I probably would have spent years in a lukewarm marriage, convincing myself it was enough. His betrayal was brutal, but it was also the shock I needed to wake up." "And love?" Renata asked softly. "Are you open to trying again someday?" Valeria considered the question. "Yes, I think so, but not the way I tried before. I no longer need a partner to feel complete. I'm no longer looking for someone to save me or define me. If someone comes along, they would have to be someone who adds to my life, not completes it. Someone who celebrates my success instead of feeling threatened by it. Someone who understands that I am a complete package, not a puzzle waiting for its missing piece." "That man exists," Renata assured her. "And when he shows up, he's going to be dealing with a version of you much more powerful and aware of her worth." Indeed, there had been invitations. Sebastian Rossi had made it clear in a subtle but unequivocal way that he was interested in more than a professional partnership. He had been gentlemanly, respectful, never pressuring, but leaving the door open. He was intelligent, successful. They shared professional passions. In another time, Valeria would have jumped at the opportunity for a relationship with someone like that. But now she waited, not out of fear, but out of choice. She wanted to be absolutely sure that any future relationship came from a place of genuine desire, not need or habit. The following weeks brought more opportunities. A television producer contacted Valeria with the idea of creating a documentary series about women who rebuilt their lives after betrayal. A Spanish publisher offered a book contract to expand her columns into a female empowerment manual, and the National Autonomous University of Mexico invited her to give a series of lectures on resilience and female leadership. Valeria accepted everything, navigating each project with the same meticulousness she applied to her architectural designs. Her life was full in a way she had never experienced, professionally satisfying, personally meaningful, emotionally balanced. One Saturday afternoon, 3 months after the conference, Valeria received an unexpected message. It was from the personal assistant of Robert Esposito, the hotel magnate for whom she had designed the residence in Tulum. "Mr. Esposito requests an urgent meeting. Would you have availability tomorrow?" Valeria replied affirmatively, and the next day she found herself in Esposito's office in Polanco. The businessman, a man in his 60s with a reputation for being tough but fair, greeted her with a broad smile. "Valeria, thank you for coming on such short notice. I have a proposal I think will interest you." He slid a folder across the desk. "I'm developing a new hotel concept, a chain of luxury retreats exclusively for women. Spa, wellness, empowerment workshops, all designed by women, for women. I want you to design the first property in Valle de Bravo, and I want you to be the creative director for the entire brand." Valeria opened the folder, seeing preliminary renders, budgets, projections. It was ambitious, innovative, perfectly aligned with everything she stood for. "Now, why me?" she asked. "Because you understand the narrative. You don't just design beautiful spaces. You design transformative experiences, and because your personal story gives the brand authenticity. Women will trust a space created by someone who understands their pain and their potential. Robert leaned back. Besides, you are brilliant at what you do. That helps. It's a tempting offer. What's the timeline? Aggressive. I want to open in 18 months. I know you're busy, but this project could define the next chapter of your career. Valeria closed the folder, smiling. Give me a week to review the terms with my lawyer and my partner at Rossi & Associates. If we can align everything, you have your creative director. She left that meeting feeling like the universe was conspiring in her favor. Not because everything was perfect. There were still challenges at Dowse's, difficult moments, days when solitude felt heavy. But because every opportunity that presented itself was perfectly aligned with who she had become. That night, Valeria opened a bottle of special wine she had been saving for a significant occasion. She sat on her balcony, looking at the city lights, and reflected on the journey. 18 months ago, she had been on another balcony in Tulum, heartbroken, ego shattered, feeling like a total failure. If someone had told her then that that betrayal would lead her to this moment, partner in an international firm, columnist read by millions, inspirational speaker, a woman completely in charge of her destiny, she wouldn't have believed it. But here she was, not because she had overcome the betrayal, but because she had gone through it. Not because she found a way to avoid the pain, but because she allowed herself to feel it completely and let it transform her. Her phone vibrated. It was a message from Catalina. The list of the 100 most influential women in architecture and design in Latin America just came out. You're at number 7. Congratulations. Valeria smiled, took a sip of wine, and wrote back. Thank you. But the most important thing is not the ranking. It's that I got here by being completely myself. And that, she decided, was the true measure of success. 2 years after the wedding in Tulum, Valeria Sterling inaugurated the Amara Retreat in Valle de Bravo, the first hotel in the exclusive chain for women. The event was covered by national and international media, not only for the stunning beauty of the design, but for what it represented, a physical space dedicated to healing and female empowerment. The hotel had been built in harmony with the surrounding forest, using local materials, sustainable construction techniques, and a design that incorporated Valeria's philosophy. Spaces have the power to transform the people who inhabit them. There were individual suites for women seeking solitude and reflection, communal spaces where unexpected friendships were formed, a spa designed around a natural spring, rooms for workshops on personal finance, family law, entrepreneurship, art, writing, a library full of books written by women about resilience and transformation, and in the main lobby, a specially commissioned art installation, a bronze sculpture of a woman rising from broken fragments with the inscription, "You are not what broke you. You are what you chose to rebuild." During the opening ceremony, Valeria gave a speech that was broadcast live. "This place," she said, looking around the lobby full of guests, "was born from my darkest moment. When my marriage disintegrated in less than 24 hours, I thought my life was over, but I was wrong. My life, my real life, was just beginning. The Amara Retreat, named after a protagonist I once imagined, represents all of us. The women who were betrayed and got up, the ones who were underestimated and became leaders, the ones who were told we couldn't and proved we could. This is our space, our refuge, our starting point for transformations the world has yet to see." The applause resonated against the stone and wood walls. Among the crowd, Valeria saw familiar faces. Catalina, Renata, her father, who had driven from the city to support her, colleagues from Rossi and Associates, women she had interviewed for her column. some attendees from her first conference. And she saw something else. Her own reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. A 30-year-old woman, successful, confident, radiant. A woman who did not need a man to validate her existence. A woman who had turned her worst nightmare into her greatest achievement. After the official event, as the sun set over the Valle de Bravo lake, painting the sky in oranges and pinks, Valeria stood alone on the hotel's main balcony. She held a glass of champagne, the same kind that had been chilling on ice that night in Tulum. But this time, when she drank, the taste was not bitter with tears. It was sweet with victory. Her phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. "Valeria, it's Damien. I've seen everything you've accomplished. I'm glad to see you successful. If you ever want to grab coffee and talk about old times, I'd love to see you." Valeria read the message once, then blocked him without replying. There was nothing to say. There were no old times worth remembering. There was only a bright future she was building brick by brick, decision by decision, with no one's shadow darkening her light. She stood there as night fell, listening to the sound of the lake against the shore, feeling the cool mountain breeze, savoring the freedom she had worked so hard to achieve. And for the first time in years, perhaps for the first time in her life, Valeria Sterling was completely, absolutely happy to be exactly where she was. Being exactly who she was. Alone, free, unstoppable. And that, she decided to decide, was the only happy ending that mattered. The sign-off and CTAs. If you cheered for Valeria's comeback as much as we did, like this video and share it with someone who needs to be reminded of their own power, and to follow more stories of incredible resilience and real-life karma. Make sure to subscribe to the channel.